Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness, we're
Hello.
back after a little tiny break. Back to Empathy Power Up, your weekly power up, your just that 15-minute boost that we all need in the week. Where Amy J. Wilson, my amazing um, superhero, and I, Kevin, Captain Empathy, we are excited to just come in and have a conversation and share. November is a sort of with Thanksgiving and all things happening, it's sort of a shorter month, and I was not well, so Amy was gracious enough to not let's cancel the episode last week. But today we have an amazing topic, and I'm excited to talk about sharing love in the workplace. It sounds very obvious. It seems very obvious, but let me start with a simple question: How many and I'll ask you, Amy, and this is also for the audience as you think and reflect, is have how many of you heard don't talk about sex, religion, politics in the workplace, or keep that separate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also on dates too. Like, is there something where it's like, don't bring your humanity into the work that everything that you do, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, that's kind of who I am.
And so structurally, if you notice, the American and general Western, and that sort of has propagated throughout. I don't know if it's just American. I think it's mostly global, where people, companies and leaders and managers, it's all driven by people doing it to people, right? Hey, don't talk about sex, religion, politics in the workplace. This is about work. And I'm sure people will disagree with me, like, oh, keep sex, religion, politics out of work. This is not professional. But at the same time, companies will say, bring your whole self to work. We want you to bring your whole self to work, but don't talk about these things. We spend a third of our lives at work, and we're basically in a system that says cut out parts of your personality, parts of who you are, parts of how you believe, what you believe, and keep it separate. That is
Yeah.
toxic. That is
Mm-hmm.
terrible. And so our conversation today is about how do we want people to bring their full self to work, because that full self is what delivers impact. I want you to be informed by your experiences so that you bring that in. And so how do we create a workplace where people feel comfortable being themselves? And we do that by sharing love. And that's what today's topic is. And Amy, in your book, you have this amazing um, piece around Tim Cook's. I would love to hear that and bring that
Mm-hmm.
into this
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Yeah, you know, one of the things before I dive into that occurred to me while you were saying that is in the world of adult children of alcoholics, which looks at dysfunctional childhoods, right?
Hmm.
And how that shapes us today and the narratives that it creates in our lives. There's this phrase that we say where it says, when we were children in a dysfunctional home, we learned don't trust, don't talk, don't feel. And I think that that can be brought into our workplaces, right? There's in especially in the dysfunctional ones, there's a lack of trust. We don't want to talk about really what's happening and having those, some people might say crucial conversations,
Hmm.
or like don't feel, don't have emotions. And I was like, that's a part of who we are as humans. Like, why are we pulling away from that? And I think, it's the bigger system that's here. So I got this quote. It's at the beginning of chapter 15. The chapter is called Empathy at Work, Building Humanity into Your Career. So here we are. Um, so this is by Tim Cook, Apple CEO. And he says, measure your impact in humanity, not in the likes, but the lives you touch, not in popularity, but in the people you serve. I found that my life got bigger when I stopped caring about what other people thought about me. You will find yours will too. Stay focused on what really matters. There may be times when your resolve to serve humanity will be tested. Be prepared. People will try to convince you that you should keep your empathy out of your career. Don't accept this false premise.
Oh, yes. Measure in humanity, impact to humanity, not likes. Love that. What's really interesting, what a lot of people and like who prescribe to the belief that keep sex, religion, or keep parts of yourself. I'm using those three because that's sort of the in the zeitgeist. But generally, keep parts of yourself personal and separate personal and professional. Um, and salary, you're getting paid. So that's appreciation enough. That is love enough, that the salary. And the reality is anyone who doesn't have a boss. So if you're privileged and you have a boss, maybe this doesn't apply to you, but if you have a boss, which a lot of us do, that means you've experienced this. You want to be yourself, being authentic, being yourself. Just giving money, just your salary is likely not enough. You want to hear that thank you. You want to hear that that assignment you submitted was really great, or it had an impact. Those are things that help and examples of sharing love. We've heard about microaggressions, which are also aggressions just in workplace. What are the opposite? How do we bring in micro appreciations into the workplace? How do we make that a thing versus this idea where when you separate people's personalities, what you're creating is toxic positivity. So when I say, Amy, keep your parts of yourself away, and in this space you can only be Amy who wrote this book, for example, and I'm celebrating you for just that, and I'm saying separate everything else, what I'm doing is creating a toxic positivity about this one thing and creating shame and negative connotation for some of the other aspects of who Amy is as a whole person. And so that's where I think we need to change our mindset to say, how do we create a space where we have those moments? And so we wanted to discuss some of those tools today. Before I go into the tools, any thoughts, Amy?
Well, I there's lots of thoughts that I have when I think about the big resignation that has been happening over and over again. I've talked about this in some of my posts and articles and things like that, where we have this huge resignation that's happening, and I think a lot of people are fed up. They're burnout. They from dysfunctional workplaces, from the world of work, and then they also are standing up and saying, "Wait, there is not a lot of empathy here." Like, they might not call it empathy, but as I remember from the some of the work that I did in the same chapter, where I from that quote that started the chapter, is that there's macro things and there's micro things that you can do to show love and appreciation. And so, I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are around this. I've got some thoughts, but this is your show for today.
It's our show, Amy,
it's our show.
Yeah,
it's our show.
And what I just wanted to talk about, like, this idea, a lot of people, when they're looking for things, when they're trying to find themselves or find space or find safety, what they're looking for is empathy. They might not know that this is empathy. And I think that's what you tacked on really smartly there, is people in general. If you are unsure what you're looking for, start with empathy, because it's most likely it is empathy, because human experience is an empathetic experience, and we need that and we seek that. So first, let's start something that we can start from day one. You meet someone new, you come into a new company, or you have a new team member joining or bringing people in some of your first meetings. Learn your story. Ask them, what is your story? Let them share your story, not say, what is your career experience? In fact, during interviews now, when I as a hiring manager, when I'm interviewing people, I'm like, let's say Amy's interviewing, I would say, Amy, what's your story? I want Amy to share what Amy wants to share of that story to me, not tell me your career, tell me what you did in your past company. What is your story that you want to share? And then if you're in a meeting, one of the things that I am starting to implement now, and it's something I recently learned, is when you're in a meeting and there's new people that you have not met, and in a bigger company, that's very common. Let's start by going around and asking, how do you pronounce your names? This is a new thing that companies aren't doing. But if I were to go around and say, instead of assuming or mispronouncing it, which in itself is like, because people like hearing their names. And when you mispronounce their names, people don't like it. It's just a natural, it's not something ill-intentioned or evil or anything. It's just, that's how humanity is. That's a sound we love. If I keep saying Amy, 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 but I suddenly think, if I mispronounce it and Amy or something, right? It sounds weird. It hurts, right? And so, same thing with Kevin. And so let's go around the meeting and, like, everyone, there's some new people in town. Even if your name you think is easy to pronounce, let's do that, so that some people whose names might not be as easy for some folks, everyone gets it. And maybe even practice. Oh, Amy, Kevin, as people go through and everyone practices, it creates a space where not only people hear their names again reflected back to them, they feel included, and we are learning someone's pronunciations, and it creates a better opportunity for sharing that love in the workplace. So that's one tip that I am implementing myself, and I'm recently been doing because of some of the experiences around name pronunciation. Um, Another way to share love is leading with questions. This is something that as leaders, we tend to either know the answer because of our experience, or we tend to want to give, like, hey, I think we should do it this way. And I do this all the time. I'm still having to correct that behavior for myself. And I have to pause and I have to stop myself and say, how do I ask questions and lead that person to what I believe maybe is the right answer, or or together through questions explore and get to what we want to do or whatever the outcome is.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because, especially in places where I've been, there has to be like, you should know the answer, right? And there's this belief that like you need to come in and you need to have the right answer, because and not help. It's questions are not something that are always welcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, it's like, are you second guessing me? Like
Yeah.
it's that thing where it's like, oh, like there's this whole culture of just being like, no, I should speak up and I should, I should say something first, so that instead of listen. And it's pervasive, and I saw that so many different times, and so I try to
Yeah.
sit back and listen more now.
Absolutely. And I think what's important is the why. What happens when we ask questions is that person feels included, it feels valued, feels empowered, feels love. I'm not saying love in the form of romantic love. This is the workplace love that people want, because they get to speak. People like talking. Even introverted people, they want to hear their thoughts. Some people think out loud, some people think internally, but we create spaces by asking questions and giving space so that they can either think and respond or talk through it.
Yeah. My another thing I'm thinking about is, what do you say to the people that say that we shouldn't have love in the workplace?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I think that's understood between you and I think that there should be love, but like a lot of people are just being like, oh, you just come to work, you do your job, and then you're out of there, right?
Okay. I would say, I would ask them the question. I would go back to question, like, do you feel like you're working to live or you're just living? So I believe, because I get work in my workplace and I get a lot of love and I share love, I don't feel like I'm working to retire. I don't feel like I'm working just to live so that I can have moments outside. I feel like I'm just living. And so for people who say there shouldn't be love in the workplace, I believe they have not received love in the workplace.
And I might feel uncomfortable with it.
Because if you haven't experienced it, they don't know the magic of it, the power of it, the feeling of it. And so I would say maybe you should look at different workplaces, because you're not getting the love in your workplace. Maybe you should consider like finding a place, because humans need love. We need love. I need love. We all need love. Love from ourselves, love from our bosses, love from our employees. Like we had an employee survey, quarterly employee survey that does it. And I look at it as soon as it comes out. I'm like very, very anxious to look at it. I want to see. And that's a form of love when the employees give me feedback. What was great is this time it was like 100% score. And I was like, yes, I love that. And that was love that I got. All of these forms are micro appreciations, forms of ways to show love.
Yeah. And it's something I'm actually just thinking about, like, this comes to like return on investment, right? And I think the people who are business minded, who are like, oh, I think you have some talking points here about like, the value of feeling love. I think that's really connected to that. So if you want to share.
Because I feel love, I put love into my products, into my work, into my documents, into whatever I'm doing, because I feel great and happy. And when you're coming from a place of love, you're putting your best, most creative work out there. So there is an ROI case, just like you said it. And thanks for bringing that up. Last two tips real quick. This should be a no-brainer. Add your pronouns into your signature. come on. It's the safest, best way to just say, I love all the people out there, whoever, however you identify. So I'm creating a safe space. It's the best way to put a badge, like I am a person that you can feel safe around. Add your pronouns into
Mhm.
your email signature, and then hard talks. This is one
Mm.
where, like, I have a diverse team that reports to me, but at the same, like on my team, and there's some folks that I do not have similar values around, like vaccination, for
Mhm.
example, for COVID or any vaccination, not getting
Mhm.
vaccinated. And but I have to have hard talks with love and empathy in there. So they feel safe, that they don't feel like, even if my boss doesn't believe, they are sharing openly and feel safe to share and be themselves. So having those hard talks, having those
Mhm.
moments are a way of love. Avoiding hard
Mhm.
talks, whether it be performance, whether it be any of those things, is a form of not showing love. It's a form of toxicity,
Mm.
because what you're doing is you're withholding information from people, and
Yeah.
sharing
Yeah.
information data is a form of love.
Yeah. And I think for me also as an empath, I I can feel when somebody's holding something back from me. And I think it's not just an empath. I think people are smart,
Yeah.
right? And they
Yeah.
can feel when something's wrong, something's off. And so a form of love is being open and sharing that
Yeah.
information. So just to recap, and I know we're a little over
Yeah.
time here, but I just wanted to say, we talked about salary is just not good enough. We need recognition and appreciation. Number two is learn the stories of people from their own voice, right? That's one way to insert empathy in there. And then learn how to pronounce their names in meetings. So that's like one form that you can do just right now in the next meeting that you have. If you're in a room with a lot of people you don't know. Three, lead with questions, and probably open-ended questions rather than like
Yeah.
close-ended questions. Four, add pronouns and bring them up in the meeting. So I go by she, her, so that other people feel comfortable doing that. And then discussing the hard things in
Yeah.
life. So those are the tips that we've got here. And then at the end of the day, I think, to bring this all full circle, the value that what's going to come out of all of this is that, like you said, if you are a happy person, you're going to do happy work, right? And you're
Yes.
going to put your love and care into the work that you do and the clients that you meet and the people that you talk to. There's also, with a big resignation, higher retention rates. You're going to attract more people with kindness than you are going to do it with like anger and
Mhm.
resentment. And then people are going to feel like they own the world, own their world, and have accountability as well. So those are just some of the return on investment if you show love in the workplace. So
Yeah. Love that.
yeah,
I love talking about love. So thank you, Amy.
yes,
This was
thank you.
great. We'll catch you all next time.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. See you next week. Take care. Bye.